All right. Hey, everybody, and welcome. This is another episode of We've Got Issues. It is our roundtable discussion amongst a group of friends who've known each other for more than 40 years, sharing from our private chat group of our bigger group of friends what we feel is relevant and that other people may have some thoughts about as well. We do this at least once a week. And so we want to share with you ideas and topics of all sorts that are on our mind, often political, sometimes social, sometimes personal, of any variety, and get your feedback. So please feel free to comment on the things that you hear on this podcast, share it with other folk, and also like and share and subscribe. So we are always in communication and in conversation. My name is Nick Cates. I'm here with my good friends as usual, Mr. Darren Gray, who's also here in LA. What's up, D?
Hey.
All right. LA by way of Detroit, of course. And then we've got Big Ron Evans back east in Virginia.
Hey, DMV by way of Los Angeles.
That's right, DMV by way of LA. There you go. So like I said, we always get together. We feel like, most people, we kind of reflect what most people are in this country, we feel, where we're engaged enough to have an opinion. We have backgrounds that inform those opinions, and we just want to kind of get at the truth and make an offering that might spur conversation, at least to some kinds of solutions or greater understanding, or at least communication that get us out of our own particular sets of thoughts about these things. We all kind of come at these things from different perspectives sometimes, and sometimes we agree. Today, I have the opportunity to run point, as they say, and bring up the topic for discussion this week. And my topic of the week, or my theme for this week is build back better. That is my theme for this week, and not to get it confused with Joe Biden's version of build back better. What I am talking about is actually, Ron, I'm going to admit to you that I learned that I'm rethinking something that you brought up in the past podcast, which is about like one of the reasons why you moved out of LA and California, and the things that you brought up that are problems for many people about states like California, which are run by Democratic machinery, and that seem to not be delivering the kinds of solutions that people really resonate with. And many of the problems kind of persist. I think, Darren, you were in agreement with him on that. I was listening to a podcast, or actually I was watching Bill Maher's show, and he had one of my favorite public intellectuals on, Ezra Klein. I think you guys are probably familiar with Ezra. And in that episode, Ezra said one thing that I thought was really pertinent and kind of spoke to the moment that Democrats are facing about not being as popular as they would hope, even in the face of an administration that seems to be dead set on tearing the country apart. Democrats sit at less than 30% approval rate. And Ezra said, and I'm just going to read this quote because it's easier than trying to paraphrase. He says, "The personality type of the Republican Party is autocratic now. The personality type of the left is bureaucratic. You can't govern, though, if you are obsessed with process, and you can't govern if you are this obsessed with process, and you can see the outcomes. If you want to sideline dangerous autocratic movements, you have to offer people the fruits of effective government. If the places you govern, like New York and California, are not advertisements for your style of government, you are going to lose." And so that speaks to your point, Ron, about and Bill Maher was talking about how he wanted to get solar, and he spent 3 years trying to get some kind of solar hookup in his house, and because of all the regulations, they couldn't get it done. And we see the reaction to Chuck Schumer being so concerned about shutting the government down and just kind of holding things together, that he didn't take the bold step of voting against, the budget, the continuing resolution, and just seeing what happens. Like basically what I said in a past episode is that Democrats seem to be more concerned about somehow working within the rules and seeing things work, and Republicans just want to just rip it apart and take the power they have when they have it and do what they will. So my point in this whole thing is that I'm reconsidering my position and saying that the solution to move this country forward is to be less concerned about process and truly be more concerned about progress. So taking that Ezra Klein quote into consideration, what are you guys' thoughts about that quote that I mentioned?
I'll jump on it. Well, during the whole election season, that's essentially what I was trying to share with everybody in the text chat, was that the life that the Democratic Party had essentially given to people was not an attractive one. And so if you are saying that here are our policies and people are suffering under those policies, they may not vote for the other guy, but they won't vote for you either. So if your policies around key issues that are affecting people's everyday life, that is your advertisement of your policies. And I often say, Hillary Clinton didn't win because she essentially said, I'm going to keep doing what Barack did. And for a lot of people, that just wasn't effective. And so I would tend to agree with you.
Yeah. I mean, I think look, it's hard to poke holes in an Ezra Klein argument. He is absolutely brilliant. And it's hard to say that the Democratic-led California governor through legislature are not serving the people well, because it paints you like, oh, you must be a Republican, oh, you must be a MAGA idiot or whatever. And that's not the case. You want to see your team do well, be it in politics or in football, which we'll come to sometime in August. But that's the truth. And I think that that's a great way of saying that if California and New York aren't those beacons, if they aren't the true north of liberal idealism, then where is it?
Right.
And I think what we've got is we've become so incredibly permissive that we allow anything to happen in the name of self-expression or individuality, and there has to be some balance there, and I think California needs to find that.
And Ron had said something. Go ahead,
Darren.
Well, Ron had said something about the biggest contributor to civil rights was the socialists and the communists from around the world. This idea about capitalism being the best form and the best government, when you actually take it down, well, it's not, right? Because we have a $36 trillion debt. So when you start talking about things that are working, you can point to, if you want to have an argument against the folks on the right and the conservatives, and you can say, well, you've been in power too over the last 40 years, and we still have this debt. So clearly, your beacon isn't working. They just tell a better story, I think, than the Democrats. The Democrats, no matter what you say, if you have 75,000 homeless in LA, your homeless policies aren't working. It doesn't matter what you say. Speaking of which, did you hear about the $1 billion deficit we have in LA?
$1 billion? I did not hear about that.
$1 billion budget deficit starting July 1.
And is that attributable to some definite thing, or?
The city council was surprised when the mayor's office came out with that number. But yeah, it's policy. If you have a $1 billion shortfall and you're the mayor, it's your policy. You can't. You can blame it. This is your guy, because you can't.
We're gonna have to fact check you, Darren. I'm not sure if that's the case, but if it is, that certainly is a problem. One thing I'll say.
Well, and also, Darren, they're not homeless; they're unhoused, because that's more sensitive than labeling them homeless.
So listen. I don't think that LA has a policy problem that leads homeless people to come here as opposed to going many other places, right? If there were other places that were attractive, from a weather standpoint or whatever the case may be, they would have to deal with these things as well. Now, I'm not saying that our city has dealt with them always the best way, but I think that problem isn't just a problem of policy, it's a problem of numbers. And when you have that number of people, unless you're just going to do like some states do, where you just bus undesirable, with air quotes, people to some other place and let them deal with it, which is what we saw during the immigration fight, then you're going to have to figure out some kind of humane way to deal with that. And I'm not going to say that.
Yeah, but Nick, that is policy. I mean, certainly while I was in LA, Santa Monica was called the People's Republic of Santa Monica because they embraced homelessness.
Yeah, but that's also because there was such a influx, and maybe sometimes it's self-fulfilling, right? When you allow a thing to go on, more people find out about it and they gravitate to those places policy. Because that's where you are. Like okay, I don't want to defend it because it's not my part. I didn't come up with it. My point is, though,
it's okay. We just want you to use the appropriate word to describe it.
I hear you. I need to be more sensitive in my language. I get you, but
no, more precise.
but like when you look at Los Angeles as the beacon of the left, and you look at homelessness, crime, I think our sales tax is 10.5%. You look at insurance rates, this is all based on Democrat policies. And if you're trying to sell, like, where in the country is there a beacon of progressive liberalism that you can point to and say, see, it's working? And I don't see that there is one. And so if, there's a reason why the conservatives have been so successful. All they have to do is show what you're doing, and you see what you're doing. You notice that Governor Newsom is backtracking on a lot of his old policies now because he wants to run for president, and he knows his track record isn't going to sell anybody to vote for him.
I certainly get that. I think that we're in a conundrum where the most populous and richest states in the country, meaning mainly New York and California, provide a lot of the tax base for the whole country, right? So a lot of the money that comes from these states is one of the main funding sources of the federal government. At the same time, we are facing some very serious, situations that are not, they're not a good look when you talk about, how the country is run. I think that's something that we have to grapple with. I think that's something that Democrats have to grapple with. And I think that the idea of being effective, like it's one thing to be sensitive and be all inclusive and all those things, but if you're not effective in addressing problems in this era that we're in, you'll never be able to tell a good story. And that's been part of the problem for Democrats, I think, with this last election. But even going back further than that, we're trying to tell too many stories and solve too many problems instead of solving the main problems. And I said in a previous episode that, people have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable because there is no magic pill. There's nothing that's going to make it all right for everybody. It's the country's going to have to be an experiment in shared prosperity and shared responsibility. So it's not going to be you get everything that you want and they, which is what the Republicans are telling us, is that we'll give you everything you want and just take it away from somebody else. Well, at a certain point, those people from whom these things are being taken, they're going to fight back. But if you make it an ethic, I think as a democratic message that, listen, we were guilty of our own, we were guilty of maybe being outside of the mainstream more than we thought. Most people really do want to see our country work. But in order for that to happen, we can't operate as 50 individual countries tied loosely together. We're going to have to rise or fall as one. And in order to do that, sometimes we're going to feel pain. This is the crazy thing about the Trump administration. It's true. In order to fix things, there has to be some pain. Some pain is going to be felt to reset a fractured leg. There's some pain that's going to be felt to, if you have to take some kind of invasive therapy for the illness that you have. But in order to do that, you have to show that on the other side of that, there's a reason why we're doing this, and it's going to be better for everyone, not just for our constituents, but our constituents are the American people. And so I think, to boil down my thought, effectiveness has to be part of the conversation when you're talking about where do we go now forward if you're on the left. It can't just be we're going to shoot at all the problems. We have to pick our battle and say what's going to be the best thing for the most number of people, and let's go after that.
And I'd agree to an extent. I think what the reckoning of the Democratic Party has got to be is priorities. Mm-hmm. It's like playing chess. Unfortunately, some pawns are going to die.
Yep.
And if you want to win the game, you can't protect everybody. You will lose. Yep. And I think they've been trying to, so they just have to decide who gets protected and who doesn't. And it's a very uncomfortable conversation to mm-hmm. be able to say, I'm sorry, but this group over here, we can't help you. And mm-hmm. And it's I think it's something that the Democrat Party is going to have to struggle with. You got to decide who or what constituency is your bread and butter and help them. And some people will benefit and some people are going to be left behind. Yeah, and that's just the reality.
But Darren, I think it's maybe a little less transactional than that. I think it's not so much, who are we going to protect and who are we not? I think it's like if we hold up a certain standard, there's an opportunity for everyone who decides to try and meet that standard to be protected. We're not going to try and micro target every individual constituency that we can. We're going to say that, listen, if, like I said in previous episodes, if we make some tweaks to the Constitution, for example, and that's easier said than done, but if we really try and set a floor that is achievable by the masses of people, no one can argue about that. But if there's all these loopholes and workarounds and cutouts and set-asides where you don't have to do this, but you can still get the benefits of it, then we're never going to solve the problems. You have to fix the structural things in order to make people feel like, okay, I get it. That if I can just do that, I'm protected.
But Nick, I mean, the problem is it feels like you're saying the Democrats are right. We're just not doing a good job explaining the story, or there are structural issues now apparently with the Constitution that prevents us from being able to tell our story and basically win. It's really more like, was it Occam's razor, where it's like, what is the simplest answer? The simplest answer is the majority of people in this country don't buy the Democratic platform.
I get it. And I'm saying change your platform structurally. Change what you're aiming at. You're aiming at the wrong target, right? Your target is that you're trying to look at a lot of little things that you can do as opposed to choose the big ones that are going to get everyone's attention.
Well, right. But they are choosing big things. It's just the ones they're choosing. Like when you look at immigration, the United States cannot afford to be what's written on the Statue of Liberty. We can't afford that anymore. We just can't. Mm-hmm. And so we ain't got the money.
Hot take.
But no, I mean, I'm just saying, I'm just saying that when you look at our budget and the money we have, we can't be that. We can't be that beacon anymore.
I think we can be that beacon again structurally. If we have a structured immigration policy that is the same for everyone, no matter what country you're coming from, or if you've got money to buy your way in, or whatever the case may be, like it's structured. And I agree with you, Dan. We can't just say everybody come, we'll figure it out once you get here. It's like if you come here and you don't come here the right way, you're not going to get in and you're going to suffer some whatever, right?
Yeah, but that's the problem with the Democratic Party is no one is illegal. That their philosophy does not agree with what you're saying.
I'm agreeing with you that policy doesn't work. I just agreed with you.
Yeah, right? but what I'm saying is I don't know if the Democratic Party that is such a core component of who they are. I don't know if they can.
Right. See, this is one area where I want us to improve in our communication, right? I'm not saying what they've always done. I'm talking about what the solution is now. I'm particularly addressing Ron's point, about, the whole Occam's razor thing, which is that, listen, it's not a matter of messaging. I'm not saying that change the message and say the wrong thing better. I'm saying say a better thing. And that's to address your point, Darren, on immigration, on the economy, on racism, on even wokeism, right? Even DEI and all those things. Like, I don't think any of those things are bad in and of themselves. In some ways, they've allowed the narrative to be co-opted or to be diminished in terms of the progress that has been made, and they've allowed a positive to be turned into a negative. But I think there's a way to address those things, as well as immigration and the economy, and be more on point with what people really want and need, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, it always pains me to have conversations about politics with you, Nick, because I always feel that I am playing tug of war and I'm over on Darren's side, trying to bring you from the far left to at least the middle.
What's far left about what I said, though, Ryan? What's far left about it?
Well, let me get my thought out, and I'll come back and then. When Darren said that, we can't afford to bring people into this country anymore, he's right.
And I said so. I said so. I agreed with him. Didn't I just say I agree with you? We need to deal with a policy that makes it clear that there's a clear and distinct policy without a lot of workarounds, that if you come according to how this is set up, then you have a chance of getting in. But if you just show up, you're not gonna have a good experience.
Right, but
I agree with that.
Okay, you're talking about documented and undocumented. I'm sorry, you're talking about undocumented.
I'm talking about changing the immigration system so it's clear and it's effective. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying tell the same story in a better way. I'm saying you need a better story. You need a better policy.
Well, yeah, and what we also need to understand is when the Statue of Liberty was given to us in 1876 or 86, I can't remember when, I think it was 76, 100-year anniversary of our country. We were like stealing the plans on from England on how to manufacture textiles. And then we were asking people from Ireland and Italy and Germany, come over to America and work in our factories in New England. Okay, so when we had that beacon of light, it was really like a beacon of economic direction saying, come over here because we need your labor in the New England area.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when we had that beacon of light shining towards China, it was like, come on over here. We really need help on the West Coast building railroads.
Mm-hmm.
All of our immigration policies were predicated upon a financial outcome on building something in this country. Fast forward to 2025, and we don't have the same need for a massive labor coming in. In fact, it's the opposite. We have, because of the advent of technology, AI and otherwise, we have a need for less people because our technology is increasing. So if anything, we need less people coming into this country because we don't have the same amount of jobs to work on as we did 100 years ago.
But so thus my agreement with both of you. And you seem to want to pigeonhole me into saying that I'm saying we should do the same thing, have the same policy, just package it up differently. And I'm saying exactly the opposite. I'm saying what Ezra said, which is that if you want to win, you have to show that your policies are effective in addressing the problems that people care about, essentially, yes. Right? Which means that you have to change your policies to really confront head-on the problems that are front and center. We've talked about this in previous episodes that you guys have said, rightly, I might add, that the same problems that exist now have existed under Republicans and Democrats and so forth, and they're all pigs drinking from the same trough. They're all getting fat, from the same whatever. And I completely agree with that. And so what I'm saying now is that I'm saying, hey guys, I agree more than I have even before. And I'm saying this autopsy that Democrats are doing has to look at, okay, if we really want to run this country and we want this country to work, we have to confess our sins and we have to change our policies to be more effective. We can't solve every problem because that's just not realistic. Look at your own life, look at your own family, look at your own community. Nothing's perfect. Things can be good, but they're never going to be perfect. You're not going to get all the things you want. And that has to be a story that they tell, and they show how if we do what we want to do, it's going to make it better for everybody. You have to find those things that are really going to resonate, right?
Yep.
So that's my.
But what are, like, I don't know, even in principle, forget about policy, in principle, what the Democratic Party stands for. I used to know what the Democratic, from a Democratic, Detroit was, heavily Democratic. I knew what the Democratic policy, their principles were, working families. And, it's funny, like, on the side, everybody's burning Teslas. They were burning Hondas in Detroit back in the 70s and 80s because, those foreign cars were coming in. I knew what the Democratic Party stood for. I don't know what that is now. And I don't know if they know what they stand for now. So,
I think it's pretty clear that they don't know what they stand for now. And I think, to your point, let's just talk about the economy, and bringing back industrial jobs, for example. Is that ever really going to be a thing? Maybe it could. Maybe having a higher industrial base could work. But if you want to bring that back, I think you have to have a real solution that's going to actually move the needle. I'll give you a bad example of how I feel about it. It's like, well, there's a lot of people who are not working who probably would work if they could work and if we could train them. I'm going to give you an example. Like, what if we tried to bring manufacturing back and put it on? And please don't take this as being a racist statement or something like that. But what if we took that manufacturing back and put it on Indian reservations? Okay, there's a lot of people who are on Indian reservations, for example, who are out of work, who have no hope for whatever, blah, blah, blah. And they're relatively low skill and maybe hungry for jobs kind of community that you could use and build up that manufacturing base by going there, right? That's just one example. I don't know what all the ripple effects would be or whatnot, but and then you made it an opportunity for people who live on the reservation and people who want to come to the reservation to work, to be able to do that. I'm talking about coming up with common sense solutions to use a labor force that you don't have to import. You don't have to have people come here to do that. There are plenty of out of work people or people who are looking for a better life that you could utilize, but nobody's trying to think about, how do you use what you have already? That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. So Darren, how do you feel about that? And hopefully you're going to be consistent.
Well, if the wages are the same as it would be for if you're moving to the Indian reservation so that you can avoid some of the federal regulations, fine. I have a problem if you're paying them less than they would get paid outside of the reservation, because that depresses wages for the people outside of the reservation. That's why I always have a problem.
Which city would you like their wages to be indexed to? New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco?
It's whatever the value of that labor is, so that the price of the object is still affordable. You can run that number and it will be what it will be. If you say a car costs X number of dollars, you can actually run an analysis to see what wage would allow you to work. And that is what I would use as a wage. That way we all know what the cost is. Now, if the sunshine tax means that you can't put that plant in Los Angeles because the property taxes are too high, but you can put that plant in Wyoming and the labor, you still get a check. At least now we have a shot at it, because I can then move as a worker from LA to Wyoming and get the same pay.
So ironically, Nick, I think your idea is great. And it's funny to hear Darren embracing the tenets of socialism. He wants to make sure that the worker class is paid the same wage regardless of what state or city they live in. And this is where it breaks down into factionalism, because it's not good enough to say, let's take it and put it into a depressed area, which is a great idea. But now you have people coming in and saying, well, a depressed area is, Appalachia, it's the Mississippi Delta, and what about me? And they get and the good intentions go out the window because it breaks into factionalism.
And this is where now having a better story is important, right? So let's say the policy is we're going to bring manufacturing back, but we're going to start in depressed areas, Indian reservation, Appalachia, this place over here in the deep South, whatever the case may be, right? And you already anticipate that there are going to be people that say, what about me? Why do those people get a certain thing? This is where your story about how the nation as a whole starts to pull itself up from starting at a particular place. There's always going to be trade-offs. And if you're afraid to tell people the truth about the trade-offs of being in a multicultural, multi-economic, multi-racial, multi-whatever society, then you'll never do anything, right? You have to be willing to say, these people over here seem like they're getting something that you would want, right? But on the next thing that we're going to do, maybe that will impact you better, right? Because this isn't just a one size fits all, one policy solution. It's like, here's how we're going to start bringing manufacturing back. It's not the end of the story. It's just the beginning of the story, right? You have to have a forward-thinking, long-term, like multi-dimensional solution, and not just like, hey, we're going to put them on Indian reservations. Our job is done here, right? You have to have a vision. You have to show people the vision. That's exactly the opposite of what the Trump administration is doing. They're just doing stuff without a vision, and people who are afraid or just want their team to win, to your point, say, okay, great, let's let them do it. Let them break it down. Let them do whatever they're going to lay people off, whatever. But there's no vision behind it. There's no sense of like how this makes America stronger, better. If you can put policies behind a vision that shows people, maybe it is different than what we've been told. Maybe this idea that separating us and having us be like at one another all the time about everything is not in our best interest. Maybe it's in our best interest to say, give this person this, I'll get that. The other person gets the other thing. And sometimes I get nothing, but as a country, we're more economically sound. So maybe my 401k looks better. Maybe there's less crime. Maybe there's whatever, because solutions are actually moving the country forward as a whole.
But that for some of us, we've been told that to wait your turn. And I think you're going to have a problem with trust in that equation, because there are some of us who were told by the Democrats, we're going to do this with this group over here, but, you're going to be next. And it never comes around to, someone's got to wait. And it's been that problem, and even with Reagan and his trickle down economics, it was like, this is going to help everybody in the long run. Well, in the short term and in the history of this country, Black people in particular, we've always been told that, once we do this, and then it's going to be your turn, and it is never our turn. So I think the Democrats are going to have, even if they come up with a better story and a better policy, there's going to be some people who will be like, I don't trust you.
I think you're always going to have that. And that's not a problem that you can solve overnight. That's why you have to have a long-term vision, and you have to have actual people that really want to do it, right? The perverse incentives right now for people in politics just don't incentivize them to do long-term things and really care about the outcome more than their personal gain from it, right? And so that is the problem. That's why I'm talking about structurally and people-wise, we have to have a really reimagination about what it means to be an American first, and then also to be a Democrat and a Republican. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, God, it just pains me to agree with Darren so frequently. But
that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, man. Yes. A perfect example of Wait Your Turn. And there's a This American Life podcast that went into various neighborhoods and asked, why are people of color voting for Trump? and they went into Dearborn, Michigan. And I knew Dearborn, Michigan because our buddies from Dallas and Denver, when we all went out for the Michigan USC game, we just happened to have like food in Dearborn, and it was fantastic. And it was a very heavily
Fun downtown, man.
yeah, it's a very heavily Arab American center. And in the podcast, they talk about how there's a large Arab population that doesn't trust Trump, but they want somebody to speak at the Democratic National Convention. And that would be a sign to the Arabs in Dearborn that, yes, they're taking their message seriously. And yes, we're going to get out to vote and help you win Michigan. And they documented how they kept going to the convention saying, hey, we want to speak. We want to speak. And of course, the Democrats were like, wait your turn, because we got to make sure we don't upset people that are pro-Israel. They never got to speak. The guy goes back to his constituents, and of course, they're all mad because he had promised that he would be able to speak. He didn't, and they did not turn out to vote. And Trump won Michigan. So telling people to wait your turn, we've heard it, and every minority group, every disenfranchised group has heard that so often that it's like, I don't want to hear it anymore. When is my turn?
I get you guys. Ryan. Listen, I'm as sensitive to that as anybody. No one's going to win an election on the message, hey, if everybody waits their turn, we're going to have a better country. That's not the message. The message is we've got a big strategy to bring everybody forward. And here's how it works. But you're going to have, like, nothing in politics and in government works right now in a do it today, see the results tomorrow. So you've got to elevate people's consciousness above that. And how do you elevate people's consciousness above that? First of all, you get away from this kind of kleptocracy that we've had before we have this autocracy. The kleptocracy is that there are people who are more equal than others, meaning people who have money and people who have status and people who have connections and people who have power, they get things that the rest of the people don't. And if people can see how your administration, how your whatever is going to circumvent that and mean that whether I'm a drug dealer or I'm a white collar criminal or I'm a politician or I'm a billionaire and I break the law, I get treated the same, right? The government looks at me the same. Like, there's got to be a messaging and a policy around how to level the playing field so that someone like Donald Trump, for example, and I'm not just saying him, I'm saying it because he's the easiest example, where the justice system said, let's just pump the brakes on dealing with any of the indictments or any of the whatever and putting him on court. Maybe the federal government doesn't want to be seen as holding the levers of power against him as a former president. When the levers of power are used just as expeditiously on the highest person as they are the lowest person, everybody feels like they've got an equal stake in it. That's what I'm trying to say. And then people may be more willing to say, well, let's see how this plays out, because I see how now power and money don't influence things as much as they used to.
Well, how or who do you see in the Democratic Party or in the wings that actually has that character? Because I don't see it.
But having this conversation might make people who do have that kind of character rise up. It may be someone who's already there, maybe someone who's going to come there, but it's never going to happen if nobody sticks.
Right, agreed. I just don't see the impetus with the Democratic Party. I don't see anyone having that character, and I'm not saying the Republicans have it either. I'm just saying that if you as a community say, if we kiss this president's butt, we get something for our community, or if we take this other thing and have a hope for our community, people are going to do the shortest transactional thing.
I guess I'm trying to figure out.
I think that's how it has worked, Darren. It's been very transactional, and politicians have used that to their advantage. They've said that if I make this problem, to Ron's point about the Dearborn thing, the Democrats made the calculation that if we rather piss off the Arab constituency than the Jewish constituency, right? But if there's a knowledge that, you know what, you guys may both take an L on this one, because we got a bigger vision than having you speak or you speak, right? Like there's got to be that. I'll tell you one thing that I think is imperative. All these people who are thinking that I really want to run for president in 2028, right? You need to start running now.
Yeah.
You need to stick your head up and say, I know what to do.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of being coy and saying, "Oh, I'm a governor. I'm dedicated to the job." No, you want to be president. So you know what? You need to start, because this is a long-term thing. If you want to wait to the right time, this is to your point, Darren. Who is it? One? The first person who comes up and says, "Listen, I'm not doing it the way that it's always done. I'm here and I'm saying I want this because I plan to be an American. I plan to live here. I plan to die here. I'm not planning on moving to another country. I want my country to work. And so this is why I'm sticking my head up right now. And I may not win, but I'm changing the conversation. I'll tell you that much. We're not going to talk about what we talked about last time. That's what it takes.
Interesting. That's sort of what Trump did in 2014 when he stuck his head up. He said, I'm not going to do what the mainstream Republic, I'm doing something different.
We've been shown the playbook, Darren. Yeah. We've been shown like all this stuff. This is what this is what Ezra was talking about. Like, you guys still keep doing stuff, and the playbook the game has been exposed. You've got to be willing to lose to win. And Trump never for a day said, I lost anything. I've never lost anything. I've always won, or I was robbed, right? Mm-hmm. Now, you don't have to go that far, but you have to have the strength of your convictions. And from Gavin Newsom and his podcast, and all these people are a horrible disappointment, because you know what they really want. They want to be president, but they want to tiptoe to the middle, as opposed to saying, no, you know what? I want this. This is what I want to do, and I want it because I believe that I have the truth. I have the answer that will help us move forward. And there's nobody right now who's willing to do that and take the L. So anyway, that'll lead me. We're way past our time. And Ron, Darren, you can thank me for bringing Ron over to your side once again. And,
I think it's helpful for Ron to learn.
much as that causes Ron grief and distress, but
it's hard being a moderate. But
that I'm gonna take us to our parting shot. My parting shot is I want to, as a example of somebody who I feel is a truth teller in this age, I want to give a shout out to D.L. Hughley. There are many people who I've mentioned Ezra Klein. There are many people, but as a Black man in America who is, I think, speaking some really cogent, often funny, other times deep, but always considered points about where we are and where we might go. I think D.L. Hughley is a great example of that. I mentioned the Bill Maher show that featured Ezra Klein. I think it's a great episode. I'm not going to link to it in the show notes, but if you see the March 22nd, 2025 episode, if you have some streaming thing, I think you can check that out. There will be a link to a Don Lemon interview with D.L. Hughley in the show notes. He gives a I think really great analysis about the way power sees race in America in particular. And one thing he says, and I'll leave you with this, is that from his standpoint, when poor white men understand that they're in the same plight as Black people, because the people who really have the power have no concern about you if you don't have a certain level of money and status, that's when our country will truly wake up and be on a path where we recognize that we really are stronger together, and that we've been bamboozled into thinking that race is a real dividing line between people, and it's absolutely not. And you're seeing it every day, that wealth and power have much more sway than race in our country. And that's my parting shot. Big ups to D.L. Hughley. I think he's a great thinker and I hope you guys enjoy that clip and look for others where he's speaking. He's out there all the time. So, any final thoughts from you guys before we get out of here?
No, I enjoy it once again being here and seeing Ron come to an epiphany that I am right.
Well, recently he did diagnose you as having, some kind of emotional,
some kind of psychological.
Yeah. Darren, there's a difference between being right and being on the right.
Yes, and I am
You
both.
are on the right.
But
no, it's great conversation. It's I will leave you with this. There was a thought exercise that we did at our house, and this speaks to California and Los Angeles and the governance problem. And I asked a friend, an out-of-town friend of ours, and I asked, and the thought exercise was, if someone told you that you just inherited a $2 million home, but you have to move back to Los Angeles to claim it, would you? Both of us said no. And I think that speaks volumes to, and I love me some money, but that speaks volumes to how hard it is to enjoy life when you've got a lot of structural issues that rob you of your happiness.
Mm-hmm. And as my parting shot, I will say that happiness starts from being where you're at and making the most of it, because everything is trade-offs. There is no perfect place. And so I'm looking for some to inherit that $2 million LA home, because in 5 years it'll be worth $4 million. And I can go move wherever I want. So there you go. There's that. So if you guys have any thoughts about what we've shared today, as usual, we welcome your comments, criticisms, feedback. We don't expect you to agree, but we expect you to have thoughts that are worth sharing and worth debating over. So, but we don't mind if you agree either, particularly with Ron. He particularly likes it when you agree. So tread lightly. Anyhow, guys, always a pleasure being with you. And we hope you guys out there will stay with us and see you on the next time we get together right here on We've Got Issues. We'll see you guys next time.
See ya.